Welcome to the No Say Project. I'm your host, Marc Stevens, author of Adventures in Legal Land. Of course, Government Indicted. You can get them both at my website. It's marcstevens.net. Again, that's marcstevens.net, especially if you are being attacked by one of these psychopaths. Oh, we're going to talk about psychopaths today. The psychopath circus tends to be a very common theme here on the No Say Project, because what we do here on LRN.FM every Saturday from 4 to 7 Eastern Standard Time, right here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network, is help people that are being attacked by these predators. And we will take your calls today. I should know this off the top of my head, but I'm going to look just in case, because we know it's 218-632-9399 is the phone number, 218-632-9399. You can also get me on Skype. We do not pick up Skype calls during a segment like this, so we'll always connect you during a break. So don't call me during a segment. I will not be able to get that. We try to have a little bit of professionalism, especially like the last week. We hope not to have that particular problem this week here on the No Stay Project. But the Skype username is Frank Rizzo 3. Yes, that is a tribute to the Jerky Boys. Frank Rizzo, of course, they took that from the infamous Philadelphia mayor, Frank Rizzo. But it's Frank Rizzo with the number 3. And we can also, if you would like, put you into the No Stay Project Skype chat. I want to say hi to everybody there because we hit another milestone. I guess after you hit 250 on there, every new participant is a milestone, but we got 264 people. I highly recommend if you're wanting to learn how to prep to engage the psychopaths, if you're being forced into the psychopathic circus, to definitely contact us and at Frank Rizzo 3, contact me, and I can put you into the No Stay Project Skype chat where you can we have role-playing sessions. So most of us have been through this already. We have already been viciously attacked by these animals. And so based on our experience and how to deal with that and get the attack stopped, we're able to help prep you. And what we do is we go through role-playing. It's been very, very helpful for people. We've had a number of things thrown out. So, again, big props to all the guys who give of their time freely to help others who are being attacked and are being forced into the psychopath circus. So, please, definitely keep that in mind. Another thing, we'll get to the calls in just a moment, is that what I've been recommending is, and we'll talk about this more later, because I've got this whole thing where I was actually told that, talk about logical fallacies. An excuse not to answer my questions was because, quote, you're not the media, Mark. So we'll discuss that, but to be able to engage them, make calls as reporters, as an activist journalist, make calls or go in person to these bureaucrats, not the cops, as if you watch my video about being stalked by Mesa PD. We don't walk into the police department and ask them questions. They're far too dangerous. But city council meetings, things like that, where in addition to doing the role-playing, you're actually engaging the psychopaths in their own environment publicly, and you're asking them basically the same questions, and so that'll help prep, of course, for court. Plus, it gives us more evidence to help people who are on the fence to realize that governments, just like I told this PIO yesterday, the public information officer, governments are just men and women forcing us to give them money. That's as simple as I can make it. It is absolutely irrefutable. That is exactly what they're doing. They're forcing us to give them money. And everything else is a distraction from that point. Like I said in Adventures in Legal Land, it's nothing but PR. When you get beyond the whole thing, give me money or I'll kill you, all of it is public relations to cover up that violence. Okay? So we'll get into that more as we go along in the show, but I want to get to the calls. We have, Gilbert in San Francisco is joining us again. Gilbert, welcome back to the No Stay Project.
You hear me?
I can. What do you have for us today?
I had a few cases. One was like child support, and there was another one that's a text franchise board when I took to collect from me. I wanted to discuss the child support. Now, just in the beginning, I do want to pay child support, but I don't make a whole lot of money, so I wanted to see if there's a way to get it removed or squashed or something like that. But I did go down to the child support person originally when I went down there, because the person, he didn't activate my driver's license, so I was driving a car without a license for about a year, and I didn't know that. But he said he gave me a release. But when I went down for a job to get a driving record. They said my license was suspended, so I went down to the child support office. I talked to the rep over there, and he did a couple of things. Oh, you have this. We didn't release the other case that you had, so they released it, and I guess now I should have my license released. But when I went down there, I mean, I got that taken care of, and I started asking about questions about the child support. And I asked them, is this voluntary to pay child support? And he said, no. He said, no, it's not voluntary, that I have to pay it. So I'm not sure,
Well, I would say, if they're your children, they're your responsibility. You shouldn't have to be forced to do that. If there's a problem as far as not being able to pay the ordered amount, then you can always file for modification, which it sucks you're in that situation, but that's the way it works. I mean, if you, they're your kids, support them. If you have an issue paying because of certain things outside of your control, you're not working or whatnot, then you can always file for a modification. What sucks about that is, in addition to being in court, which always sucks because, hey, it's the psychopath circus, even if it is just domestic relations, it's a DR situation, you're going to have to give them all the information. You're going to have to be able to show that how much you are bringing in and how much, and what your expenses are. You're going to have to be able to account for all of that, and so it's basically an economic proctoral exam. You're going to have to lay it all on the table for the judge to be able to modify that. And usually if you can do that, that's not a problem, because what you're getting into now is you're going to be getting into arrears, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and that's just going to add up and add up and add up. And then when you got the interest on it, I'm sure in California they do that, they have interest. That's going to make it so that you can never pay it off. So I would file a modification as soon as possible. And unfortunately, you'll have to lay out all your financial information, which really sucks. But I don't
make a whole lot in the first place.
Well, that's not the issue. To me, that's not the issue.
Keeps on trying to get more money out of me somehow. I'm going back and forth.
That's why
I'd rather pay her, on my own than have someone force me to do something that I don't like in the first place.
Well, you have to get
they'll suspend my license or do something.
Well, you drove around with for a year without it, so unless they're trying to link this this drought to you not having a driver's license, no damage is really caused. But that's me. I would just not use the driver's license. But the only way to get around having the court order is to have some kind of, she would have to agree to a consent decree that she doesn't want the court involved and she trusts you and that she knows how much you're making and she's worked it out with you. From what I know about DR stuff,
that's going to happen, though.
I was going to say, from what I know about DR stuff, good luck with that. That's probably not going to happen. So you're going to have to lay out all your cards on the table, and it's going to just be a by the numbers thing. You'll probably have a certain amount that are going to be dedicated to the the payment, so they'll lower the payment, but there's probably going to be a portion of that is going to be to paying back the arrears, which hopefully has not gotten into the 5 or 6 figure mark, where a lot of times...
I think it's maybe less than 2,000.
Oh, okay. So it hasn't gotten so out of control that it's something, that you can't ever pay back. So that's what I would do with that. What are we looking at as far as the franchise tax board? My buddies in Sacramento, where I have them on record. Go to the markstevens.net and check out the voluminous call of shames that we have there. We don't need facts. We don't need evidence. And it's not threat, duress, and coercion when we, the government, do it. Yeah, you see, when we, the government, do it, it's not wrong. Why is that? Because I said so. And that literally is their position. It's sick. Why they're still in business. Wow. Okay, so what's going on with them?
Well, what's this child support for? I asked him a couple of questions.
Okay, well, hold on just a second. We'll get back to the franchise tax board, and we'll pick that up in the next segment, because they're always fun to talk about, and you always have to have a full segment with the franchise tax board. It's too much BS to try to cram into just a couple of minutes. So we'll be back here on the No State Project in just a few moments. The number is 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399, and Frank Rizzo 3 on Skype. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network. My website, of course, is markstevens.net. And coming to you live from the fortified compound in Phoenix, Arizona. Actually, Mesa, Arizona, where if you ask questions of a police officer and you ask them to prove that their laws actually apply, you too can be considered a threat to officer safety. And I imagine it's not just Mesa PD that will do that. If you walked into any police department, they would probably do that. But I don't recommend you doing that. If you're going to ask the police, do like what I do and call California. Now, I live in Phoenix. Call California. Call Washington. Call anywhere but the immediate area where you're in range of their guns. And we're hoping that JT is going to make it for the show today. If not, we understand because JT is actually at the AgoraFest 2014 in Minnesota, and it is at the Via Maria Retreat and Conference Center, 29847 Country 2 Boulevard in Frontenac, Minnesota. So JT was just going to show up, check things out, and maybe get some books sold and let people know about the No State Project. And if you're in the area, definitely check it out. It's probably going to be pretty cool because, hey, it's the AgoraFest. So hopefully very soon we will have a report from JT regarding that. And again, if you want to join us here on the big show, it's 218-632-9399. Even though it's not real media, that's what I'm told anyway. So even though we're not real media, we still get a hell of a lot accomplished here. Considering that's the thing. It's like they're more interested in the method of transmission and as opposed to the actual content, which is what journalism really is about, not the method, whether it's in print and audio or I'm on a damn bullhorn on the corner. Journalism is journalism, regardless of how the medium that you use to get your information out. So we want to go back to the phones. We're talking about the Franchise Tax Board with Gilbert in San Francisco. Gilbert, so welcome back to the show. What is going on with my favorite group of psychopaths in Sacramento?
Yeah, I got a call one day saying I had to call this Franchise Tax Board. And then when I called them, I asked them, was an assessment done? And she said, yes. And I asked her, you know who that person is who did the assessment? She said, no. Then I said, was that person, I go, now I asked her, can you identify that person? She again said, no. Then I said, whoever you had, does that person who did that submit have first-hand knowledge that done did assessment? Again, she said no.
Oh, so you're talking a little fast, so it's a little difficult to understand, even for me being from New York. What was that part she said? You were asking her if there was any personal knowledge?
Yeah, that whoever that person who did my assessment, she said there is no person who did the assessment, and
okay, so it was done by the. It was done by the. Well, hold on.
It was. She couldn't identify that person who did it, and I asked her, "Am I required to pay? What I owe?" And she said, "No."
What kind of? Wait, hold on, Gilbert.
If I pay,
let's hold on. We got time to flesh this out. What kind of a question is that, though? I mean, you've done pretty good by finding out that an assessment was done. It was done by some, and then you.
Who it was.
Yeah, it was done by a person, not just a computer, a human being. We'll use the term in its broadest sense over here because we're talking about tax agents. She's not.
She explained to me how it works. He said it's automated. It goes into the system, and I guess a piece of paper comes out, and that's what you owe.
Okay, so it wasn't a particular individual, man or woman, at the Franchise Tax Board. It was just information.
I told her, well, someone had to input the information, but she said she can't. She don't know who it is because everybody, I guess, as a group order gets your file, then they put it in, and you know.
Right, and I already know from experience, from what they've told me directly, so from personal first-hand experience, they've told me that the people who enter the information into the computer, so this is what happens. They use threat, duress, and coercion to get the companies, meaning people, in payroll or human resource, HR, whoever does that, they force them under threat of jail to provide the information of financial transactions. That information is then is given to the Franchise Tax Board. They get it, and then it's input by somebody who has no discretion whatsoever. They're not sitting there determining, well, from what I see, the Constitution applied, and no, they just put the information in, and then the computer with no, and this is something that JT helped me with because JT's the tech guy. We had put in a request for some information. We put some questions in regarding how the information was done by the computer, how it was computed by how it determined that somebody was subject to the law. They wouldn't answer any of those questions. How it was programmed. So you can only assume that every time somebody's information is put in there, the computer is assuming that the Constitution laws apply to them, and so that's why they're able to spit out these assessments. So with nothing more than a financial transaction. Okay, so from there, you see, it seemed, all right, you know how I do it. I would have went immediately into, well, do you have any evidence showing that the Constitution and laws of the state apply to me just because I'm physically in California? But you went in a little different direction.
I wasn't comfortable saying all that to her yet, but I just wanted to get just general information, because I asked her, am I required to file or pay the taxes? She said yes, because if you earn income, you are required to report it. That's what she said.
Sure, that's the standard line. And what was your response to that?
I didn't respond.
Ah,
I was a little nervous talking to her. I wasn't sure what to say.
Well, for those listening, anytime somebody makes a allegation like that, especially when it involves the sacred writ called the law, then you always follow up and ask them what evidence that opinion or argument is based on. It's that simple. You don't have to know anything about the code. It doesn't have anything to do with the text of the code itself. Someone is saying, well, the law says here that if you have income, then you got to pay, you got to file, return, you got to report it. Really. Yeah. And the evidence you are relying on to prove that that applies to me in the first place would be, Again, they'll give you the whole Judge Dredd.
She said, by law, I have to file, and if I don't, there'll be a levy on me.
There'll be a levy on you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's why we always follow up with what evidence is your opinion or argument based on, and the best that they can do is say, well, sir, if you go to the website, you'll get a copy. You can see the Revenue and Taxation Code, and the Revenue Taxation Code says that it applies to every resident, or even if you're not a resident, if you have a California source of income, and that is basically our old favorite from the psychopaths, circular logic. The laws apply because the laws say so. Okay, so where does this actually? Where does this sit now? Have they sent you any more form letters?
Trying to get me to do like a monthly plan. I told her I'll need more information. That she said you have to file 2 more years worth of income that I didn't file. And she gave me 30 days to do it.
Oh, well, okay. Well, we'll address that in the next segment, and then we'll get to some other callers. My name is Marc Stevens. You're listening to the No State Project here from the Fortified Compound in Phoenix, Arizona. And you can join me here on the big show today. It's 218-632-9399 or on Skype, Frank Rizzo 3. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the No State Project. I'm your host, Marc Stevens. Coming to you live here on LRN.FM. It is August 23rd. 2014. Glad to be with you here. Hopefully, we'll get to hear from J2 soon. Give us an update on what's going on at the AgoraFest up there in Minnesota. I want to get back. We're talking about the Franchise Tax Board. Unfortunately, looks like they are, well, they're pretty bad. If you've been, the IRS has gotten a lot more things thrown out by the IRS when the IRS is involved as opposed to Franchise Tax Board. A Franchise Tax Board, and somebody mentioned, hey, Mark never talks about when things go wrong. You only post the things that go right. I would say if you actually listen to the show, we talk more about the trainwrecks and in the psychopathic circus than we do about things where things are thrown, or kicked out. So chalk one up for another one of those BS critiques of the work. I don't know how many times have we mentioned on this show Mike in Idaho, who after hanging the jury the first time out on the felonies was convicted. I've mentioned that on the show, I don't know, over 9,000 times. So the idea is that, oh yeah, I'm cherry picking and I'm only posting things and talk about things where something is kicked out. Well, you're dead wrong again. But hey, Criticism is always welcome here on the No State Project, even if we're not real media, according to Jerry Cobb of the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. Not that that has any merit with me whatsoever, but you can join me here at 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. And hey, there's also Frank Rizzo 3, so that we can do it on Skype, which I will connect you during the break, because I've always, even though it's not real media, we are here live on, and I thank all the affiliates, no matter how large or small they may happen to be, that carry the broadcast. Ambush me here on a live show. I can't control the recording. All I can do is go over here. Well, actually, I would go over here, and I would just cut you off the show. But that you'd have a recording of that, and you'd be able to show that if I made a douche move like that, hey, I called to ambush Mark, and he hung up on me. And the whole world could see that. Anyway, let's get back. We're talking with Gilbert in San Francisco. Gilbert, you were telling us that they are sending you some information about a monthly program or a monthly plan to pay this alleged debt.
On the phone with her, she was trying to get me to commit to a monthly plan to pay it off.
Okay. Did you?
I told her, give me some time. I told her, let me file my 2 other income statements first before I even do anything, to make sure everything is legally, there also. So I don't want to say that I am.
So what I would do is, and I've done this before, I say, I tell you what, I will file a return. You just have to meet me halfway. Can you confirm, yes or no only, can you confirm that there's evidence proving your Constitution and laws apply to me just because I'm physically in California? And then, we'll be one step closer to a resolution. I would imagine that if you've got some leverage on them.
I think all of her is going to be something like that, but we're now just testing it out first.
It's worth a shot. You might, if you want, you can just listen to the show, and you can send them a fax. You can ask the questions in a fax to them, because there'll be a fax number on there, and say, look, I'm more than, and I'll give you what I put in there. Hey, I'm more than happy to resolve this with you guys. I just have a couple of questions, and I only require yes or no only. I'm not debating you. I'm not arguing with you. I'm not talking constitutionality. Don't tell me to look at your website. Just yes or no, and then we can resolve this. 1, can you confirm that there's evidence proving the Constitution laws of the state apply to me just because I'm physically in California? And then 2, if yes, what are those specific facts you rely on? And that's it. And fax that off to them and see if they give you a straight answer, yes or no. Call the show and let me know, and maybe email that to me, because I would love to see that, because it's one thing the Franchise Tax Board cannot do is give you a straight damn answer to a simple yes or no question.
Oh, okay.
But it's the way I would handle it. At least you're establishing. One second, you're establishing a record that you're trying to resolve this. All you want is the evidence, and put in there, because you have to anticipate that this is not an objection to paying taxes on constitutional grounds or religious or moral objections. This is just strictly an issue of evidence, and you're not arguing and you're not debating, because what I'll go through later is that is a standard political dodge and trick to avoid answering a very simple question.
Oh, okay. You had a question. She said they did an assessment with me. I also got a statement. Is that the same thing, the assessment and a statement?
They consider it to be the same thing. They consider the assessment when they say that based on this information that we got on the threat, duress, and coercion, that you owe X amount.
Okay.
All right, and
so
to them it's the same thing. It may be different with the IRS. They may have certain rules and regulations that say there has to be a 23C or something like that. Not everybody. It depends on who you're talking to, whether that's true or not. Basically, to me, I don't give a damn if they've got an assessment. If they call it assessment or it's just a charge, or to me, it's an allegation. It's an argument that, hey, Mark, somebody sent us this information. We think you're a citizen, and you got to pay XYZ, or we'll just come and take your stuff and throw your ass in jail. And well, that sounds like a good position to me. But do you have any evidence? But here with the Franchise Tax Board, they're going to treat it as an assessment, and I don't think there's any need to just get into anything. Look, if you believe your constitutional laws apply to me, show me the evidence, and I'll show you a return.
Because she was saying if I don't agree with the assessment, I can file a protest or something like that.
Let me explain something about the protest over here while we got some time in this here segment. Let me explain something to you. When they have what's called the Administrative Procedures Act, this actually isn't that bad on its face. And if you would actually do like what we did in New Hampshire, you get an evidentiary hearing. You get witnesses. It's like a trial. You have so-called due process type, requirements, and they have to produce evidence. They have to give you discovery. They've got to tell you the witnesses with personal first-hand knowledge. They've got to give you all this information. They're supposed to have this information. They're not supposed, in an evidentiary hearing, arguments don't mean they don't mean anything without evidence. Okay.
Yeah.
And now, if you're a psychopath, some of our arguments don't need evidence. No, you're an idiot. There's something wrong with you. And the only reason why people, comply with these ridiculous arguments is because you're willing to shoot us. You're willing to kill us to get us to comply. So that they're not complying because it's a legitimate obligation. No, it's the violence. So what the IRS does and what the Franchise Tax Board does, and they're permitted to do this under the Administrative Procedures Act, they can do an in-house administrative procedure if it complies with the Administrative Procedures Act. At least that's the way it is in California. And in California, it is absolutely beyond any reasonable doubt. It must be adversarial and it must be evidentiary, or it's not or it's not a hearing. What the Franchise Tax Board will tell you, well, say, well, Gilbert, you have every right to protest this. No, you don't. They are lying to, again, that's what they do. Killers, thieves, liars, right? Killers, thieves, liars. Yep. They're lying to you. You do not get to protest the assessment. And if they tell you you can protest the assessment, tell them, excuse me, I'm turning on the recording now. Tell me that again. And then you can ask them, are you willing to put on a statement on the penalty of perjury, okay, that I get to protest the assessment? They won't do that. You know why? Because you don't get to protest the assessment. They're lying to you. That's bull. Let me tell you what you get to protest. Is everyone ready for this? You get to protest the information that they got on the threat, duress, and coercion. So they'll say, Mark, if the 1099 is an error, why don't you just have them change it? Well, because you'll put them in jail if they do that. See the sick, disgusting little system that they've got? So you go back to the employer or the vendor and you say, dude, there's no evidence that this applies to me. This was done in error. And they'll recoil in horror. What, do you want me to go to jail? I have to do this. So that's their sick little protest. It's not a protest. You cannot challenge agency action in a California Franchise Tax Board protest hearing. And anyone who tells you different is lying to you. We'll be back in just a moment, so don't go away. Hey, welcome back to the No State Project. I'm your host, Marc Stevens. It is the live edition of the August 23rd edition of the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM. My website, of course, markstevens.net. And real quick, just to reiterate again, when these agencies are claiming, when they're doing their in-house administrative hearings, if it's not evidentiary, at least in California and a lot of other places, if it's not evidentiary nature where you have the opportunity to call witnesses, it's not it's not a hearing, period. Under no circumstance, I mean, if you do not have the opportunity to call witnesses, you're not in a hearing. Unless it's like a motion hearing and you're only, so there. But when you're going through these administrative processes where you're supposed to have a hearing and then you have judicial review, it's evidentiary in nature. And so they do the in-house ones to specifically deny you an actual hearing. In fact, the Franchise Tax Board employees on more than one occasion, I have it all recorded, have told me point blank, Mark, their hearings in name only. And that's why I've mentioned on the show before, well, do you tell your lawyers that? Your lawyers don't say that in court. Your lawyers do. Well, that's a full due process hearing. There's no evidence given. There's no witnesses. And there's no opportunity to challenge agency action. And if you've got an administrative attack against you, like with the Franchise Tax Board, and you don't get to challenge agency action, what's the point? They've got it locked up. They have they have guns against the employer's head. They're not going to change the 1099. If they did, they would attack. They would attack the agent, the payroll department for not doing the 1099. So your back's up against the wall. So then it comes down to, well, Mark, is the information on the 1099 incorrect? It's not relevant. It has nothing on the 1099 can be used to prove the Constitution laws apply to me. Nothing. It doesn't matter how much money. There's no evidence, nothing, no facts, nothing on a 1099 or a W-4 that would even remotely prove or even suggest that the Constitution laws apply. So it's not even relevant. But that's what they do. We got the 1099, and then we apply our law to you as if it applied, and then we say, you cannot challenge it. So not being able to challenge agency action, you don't have a hearing. And so that's why the last effort that I'm going to be making in California is filing with the Office of Administrative Law and showing that what they call is an underground regulation where the in-house hearings with the Franchise Tax Board, because they do not involve witnesses, they do not involve evidence, and do not involve a challenge to agency action, do not comply with the Administrative Procedures Act, as much as I disagree with the whole concept of law anyway, and therefore the protest hearings are illegal. And then by extension, when you have review at the Board of Equalization, well, they're a whole other set of lunatics. So, but let's get back to, we have a new caller. We have area code 412. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name is Mr. Black. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Mr. Black from Pittsburgh. Well, welcome to the show. What do you have for us today?
I wanted to commend you. You're one of my heroes. I've looked at your videos. First video was how to beat civil traffic tickets, and it's very interesting. And I enjoy the fact that there really is no such thing as a state. It's a piece of paper. That just sheds lights on everything, because you really think when they say the state of, you really think it's a geographical land area when it's not.
Nope.
And the reason why I called in is I was looking at one of your other videos. I think somebody had, a motion to dismiss. And what I really like what you put in there is when you're saying is, how do you show factual evidence that I am compelled to do anything? When you ask these administrative agencies to prove the constitutionality of their statute and show some sort of proof and evidence. And if there was any proof of evidence, what would it be? What would it consist of?
Well, I think you're misquoting there for saying I never asked them to prove the constitutionality of the statutes. I couldn't care less if it was constitutional or not. What I'm asking for is proof that the Constitution and statutes, or the Constitution and laws of the state or the government would apply to me just because I'm physically in Arizona.
So what could they?
What could they present? Well, what is the Constitution, literally?
A piece of paper, like you said.
Right.
And their authority is the fact that they can blow your brains out. That's their delegation of authority. The fact that, they have a gun and they'll have a thug shoot you in the face. Okay, so everybody look at these papers and these laws and all that stuff. It's all crooked and it's all one-sided. But that's their delegation of authority. They'll send somebody to kill you. That's it.
Right. That's the real pragmatic. That's the way it works. Absolutely. But that's not what the public relations is. They're not going to get on the TV. They're not going to get in court and say, "Hey, the evidence that these laws apply to you is the fact that this officer was more than willing to go through the force continuum and blow your effing head off." Is that enough evidence for you? We've got an article, from about a St. Louis cop who actually had that attitude and said those things publicly. But we'll get to that. But let's address exactly what the Constitution is. And I would imagine that no one listening to this show or even criticizes the material that I put forth, is going to say that the Constitution is magical, right? So we know the Constitution is literally 4 pieces of paper, and if it's the Arizona Constitution, all constitutions are just written instruments, unless you're talking about something like in England where it's in the ether somewhere. but they're 4 pieces of paper with the U.S. Constitution. So what evidence would someone have to present that those pieces of paper or the terms on those pieces of paper actually apply to you?
I don't know. That's why I called in. I'm trying to figure out the Constitution or any of those statutes.
Sure. Well, the statutes are just rules written by men and women. And that's exactly what they are. There's nothing magical. So if people think like Nicholas Court of the august New Hampshire Senior Deputy Attorney General that was not able to prove the laws applied to anybody, but he thinks that if you go through some ritual, if you go through, and this is what the ritual is. How many people here agree to this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. All right. It's good. It's good. That's their little ritual, and they think that their rules apply to everyone because a certain group of men and women who force people to give them money agree to it. Oh, so that's why I've asked, what possible evidence would you have? What facts would you have? Because we know they have such a problem with the word evidence now. What facts do you have to show that these rules of these men and women apply to me in any way? And, of course, they don't have any. See, somebody had... some other attorney who was criticizing me was saying that I don't understand what laws are because I'm under the impression that for someone to write something down and have it apply to somebody else, to other people, that every single individual man or woman, a child, would have to give their individual consent. And he says, well, no law has ever worked that way. So therefore, Mark doesn't know what he's talking about because that's not what law is. I'm like, I didn't say that. What I'm saying is if it was to apply to somebody, other than what you said, Mr. Black, which you're right, other than the barrel of a gun, you have the gun or you have free voluntary consent. And it's just such a ridiculous, every time I think of some of the criticism, it just it makes my brain turn to jelly because it's just so stupid. I have a problem processing such stupidity, especially from people with advanced degrees, because they have no excuse. But that's what it comes down to. It would have to do with voluntary consent. Now, the other side of that is the non-aggression principle. The non-aggression principle does not involve me forcing anybody to comply with it. All it means is that if you choose to violate the non-aggression principle, which you're free to do, but you have to accept death as a consequence, right?
Right.
Yeah, so my saying, and because they said, well, Mark, what laws, what rules do you think we should abide by? Simple, the non-aggression principle. Don't initiate force. Is that so difficult to understand? It doesn't impose any kind of obligation on anybody to do anything other than to leave other people alone. I mean,
yeah, you know what? One thing. I guess when you go into these courts, they're not even courts. They're private corporations, not even courts. But once you go in there, if you're going to say that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and they're even violating, and they took an oath to that. So if they're violating their own, they can't violate their own statutes and codes. Even though, like I said, the Constitution is a piece of paper, but if they're bound by that and they create a statute and code that goes against their oath and the state and the federal Constitution, is that basically how you get these cases thrown out and dismissed? Because, they're violating their own statutes and codes, in which they've took an oath and they have agreed to it. Like a code of ethics. These codes are something you agree to. If they agree to that, is that your remedy to get out of their, their noose, their revenue?
Well, Mr. Black, let's address that in the next segment when we get back. We're already through the first hour of the No State Project. It goes pretty quick here on Liberty Radio Network, but we'll be back with a lot more in just a moment. Don't go away.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome back. The second hour of the No State Project, Domestic Terrorism Radio here on the Liberty Radio Network, because it's domestic terrorism to advocate things like Bitcoin and decentralization, anything that would be an alternative and compete with the Federal Reserve System, domestic terrorism. But also, when you question the legitimacy of government, that is also considered terrorism and a threat to them. So that's what we do here, and we encourage it. I encourage people to do that more. That's why the police lieutenant a few weeks ago here in Mesa was very surprised as you advocate people don't comply with government. Yeah. Why should we comply with you violent psychopaths other than, to say, to save our own butts? But why comply when you personally can't prove the law applies? It's like there's a secret cabal of attorneys who are super smart. None of the cops, none of the politicians, none of the judges, none of the legislators, none of the regular people can produce any evidence whatsoever the Constitution and laws apply to anybody. But they all refer to this secret group of lawyers who are so smart. They can. They can. Maybe they can explain a little bit, like, you know, what we're going to talk about here. We're talking about that we have Mr. Black from Pittsburgh back on the No State Project. And what you were saying earlier, Mr. Black, was you were saying that they take an oath to support the Constitution and they can actually violate that oath?
Well, no, they're supposed to uphold that oath.
They're supposed to.
You know, in which they don't. I mean, it's just basically their own rules, because you're basically getting somebody with a gun to abide by the rules that they're supposed to go by. Because the whole point is just to get your money out your pocket, and that's
right.
the whole point of them, you know, dragging you into these administrative tribunals, because they're not even judicial courts on that level.
Well, does it matter?
So that's the whole.
You know, honestly, Mr. Black, I don't think you know. As long as I have an opportunity to confront the witness and ask some questions, I don't care if you call it judicial, administrative, legislative. It doesn't matter. As long as you have an opportunity for a fair disposition of the facts, we call it whatever you want. Call it martial, you know, court martial. It doesn't matter. As long as I can address all the arguments that are being leveled against me, and I don't care. But this idea that, I know you know, the more we talk about this, the more you're going to say supposed. Because the idea that people who force us to give them money are taking a valid oath to not violate your life, liberty, and property, it's just ridiculous. So let me get this straight. You guys are forcing us to pay you. Yep. But you took an oath that you wouldn't violate our life, liberty, property. That's right. So how do you go about not violating my life, liberty, property when you're forcing me to pay you? How does that work?
You're 100% correct, Mark. You're 100% correct. Because when they drag you down to their administrative tribunal, it's a fortress. You got to, you know, they have guns and stuff there, so you can never get a fair trial. You know, the judge is part of the complaining party, and you have, you know, the cop comes there, he has a gun on his hip, and you have these constables and sheriffs, they have, you know, guns on their hips and everything, and you have to go in there, you know, their tribunal, and you want to ask for a fair trial when it's not even fair. And that's why I respect the fact that you're able to go in there and get these cases kicked out based on what exactly is a fact. When you ask them for a fact, what is the fact that you're looking for? When you ask them for facts, they cannot prove a fact.
Well, the thing is, I already know that there is no facts, but they're not usually willing to admit, depending on the situation, that there is no fact. They'll insist that there is evidence, but that they don't have to provide that. I mean, we've got somebody in Alaska that's going through that. Well, we have the evidence. Well, we're not going to give it to you until immediately before the trial. I said, you understand this is a felony with a jury and everything? And you're not going to give me the evidence, pretrial discovery, until the day of trial? I look at it this way. If someone's making an accusation, it doesn't matter what the hell the accusation is. You could say, well, you know, actually the sun does not revolve around the earth. The earth revolves around the sun. Whoever's making that allegation bears the burden of proof. So it doesn't matter. You know, it's like, imagine someone saying to Copernicus, could you actually prove that? What facts do you have to say that the sun is not moving around the earth? And Copernicus coming back saying, what the hell's wrong with you? What are you looking for? What will satisfy you? Well, I think, you know, when you look at it in those simple terms, you know, when you just change the context a little bit, you see just how crazy it is when they say to me, well, Mark, what are you looking for? What would satisfy you? What would satisfy me is if you give me the evidence you claim to have to base your argument on. That's what will satisfy me. Just answer the damn question. Yeah, but what they do is they engage in this diversion. Well, Mark, nothing's going to satisfy you. Can you imagine saying that to a police officer when he pulls you out on the side of the street? He says, you know why I stopped you? Officer, nothing I say is going to satisfy you. So are we done here? Oh, can we go now? It's just ridiculous. The fact is they are making an accusation. They have an argument. And every argument must be based on facts and evidence. And if it's not, then it's just the wind. It's vox populi. Or, it's just, I use the Latin term in the book. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it was a voice and nothing more. Something like vox et nihil. Yeah, vox et nihil. That sums it up.
What's the fact, Mark? A code on a piece of paper? Is that what they're using for the fact? What is the fact? They always point to the writing on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Is that the fact?
No, because that is why I mentioned earlier in the first hour. You get back to circular logic, and this is something that I've been putting in my emails to these people when I respond to them. So I'm not arguing with you. I'm not debating with you. I don't mind the constitutionality. I'm not talking about this. And I'm not asking you to tell me the code applies because the code said so. That's circular logic. That's not evidence. So what you're doing is it's called circular logic because you're beginning and ending with the same thing you're trying to prove. To say that the evidence the code applies is because I wrote that it applies is ridiculous. Because it boils down to, and hey, Magistrate Judge Buttrick agreed. You go to markstevens.net and see the video. A sitting federal magistrate agreed. It's because they said so. And my other evidence, I have Colby Granville on record on HD video saying we have jurisdiction. The evidence to prove jurisdiction is because we said so. And that's what it boils down to. It's like what you said earlier, Mr. Black. You hit the nail right on the head. Their force continuum is the jurisdiction. Hell, I even have in Adventures in Legal Land when Government Indicted with Justice Holmes mentioned that jurisdiction is based upon the government's ability to kidnap and to basically hold you. It's the ability to take you. It's not about the Constitution. It's not about the law. That's all public relations garbage. They have openly admitted that their jurisdiction is violence because they said so. We are willing to kill you, which is why when I say to get rid of this problem called government, to these people who have this moral high ground, even though they're killing, lying, and stealing, is going to take massive civil disobedience, and unfortunately, it's going to take defensive force. Yes, people have to shoot back. It's going to be massive civil disobedience, and then when they get violent, when they initiate force and they start being more aggressive, people have to start defending themselves, and they have to defend themselves with enough force to neutralize the attack. And it doesn't matter that they have a badge on. Those are the two main tools that we have to getting to a free voluntary society. And I know the whole thing about, well, violence doesn't, get you nowhere. If someone broke into my home and I shot him dead before he raped and killed my family, how does that beget more violence? I've neutralized the attack. There's absolutely nothing morally or ethically wrong with using defensive force, defensive violence, if you want to use that phrase. And unfortunately, when people... Look, Mr. Black, you're in Pittsburgh. I'm sure that, you've probably had your own run-ins with these police officers that they're violent psychopaths. Some of these people don't understand the word no. They don't understand the words no jurisdiction. The only thing that they understand is force. And so there's an article that I'll read in the next segment regarding that and how some of these police officers look at us. To them, we are the enemy. Look at Ferguson. The cops look at us, and the people called government, look at us as the enemy. Well, I say the ones who are using aggression, the ones initiating physical force, they are the enemy. And if it's necessary, we should use defensive force to stop them. I appreciate the call, Mr. Black in Pittsburgh. My name is Marc Stevens. We'll be back here on the No State Project in just a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back. You're listening to the August 23rd edition of the No State Project here live from the Fortified Compound in Phoenix, Arizona. And we're here live every Saturday from 4 to 7 Eastern Standard Time right here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM. And I appreciate you can go to markstevens.net. You can look at 1620 a.m. that carries it here in Gilbert, Arizona. Not too far from me. So I appreciate them and everyone else that carries the broadcast. And I'm glad that everyone's tuning in today. We've got a lot of stuff to get to. But if you want to join me here on the big show today, it's 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399, although it's not real media. So it's kind of reification, the opposite of reification, where you just ignore things instead of creating them in your head and then pretending that they're real. Because real media depends on, and real journalism, I guess, is defined by the method of broadcast, not the actual content. and if you are keeping the sponsors happy. So that's what you get from mainstream. And I actually have some more proof of that from this week. But you can also join me here on the big show. Not during a segment. We'll hook you up during this, a break. It's on Skype at Frank Rizzo 3. That's Frank Rizzo with the number 3. Yes, that is a tribute, of course, to the Jerky Boys. I've mentioned a number of times here in the last few weeks, especially since my stalking incident with the Mesa PD decided to stalk me. I love how they said I was a sovereign citizen, where I was wearing a shirt like this, and let's see, we'll see the whole thing, the thing here on the shirt, that the anarchy, yeah. I have this huge anarchy symbol on my shirt, but I'm a sovereign citizen. I say that, any excuse that these people have to avoid answering a simple question. If they had evidence that their Constitution laws applied, they would just provide it. But before I get into what happened with the PIO, and anytime I say PIO, it's Public Information Officer. This is the guy running interference for the politicians. Their job is to make sure that people like me, who ask real questions and expose the gun in the room, don't get to damage the agency. They always run interference. That's what I have found out all the time. That's what they do. But what I wanted to before, Matthew, our buddy in Australia, had a really good question here, and it's similar to what we it's in the script. Do you regard the force continuum as proof that your laws are applicable to me? That's a damn good question. You could also add, is the fact that you're willing to shoot me, is your willingness to kill me evidence that you're, the evidence of your jurisdiction, yes or no? Which, of course, it is. Absolutely, it is. Anyway, let's see, what do we got? Gosh, I tell you, I spoke with Jerry Cobb. And he is a public information officer in Maricopa County's the county attorney's office. And so we go back to the emails I read last week, where the guy from the assessor's office, Robert, he was dodging my questions. Well, let's say he didn't want to answer my questions because he said that the county attorney's office was the appropriate office to answer those questions. Well, I got on the phone yesterday with Jerry Cobb, and you could probably find him at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office website. I don't know for sure, but you can look that up. And I had spoken to him last week, and he asked me to send the details. I did. I didn't hear back so I had to call. And that's generally what happens. If you're asking really tough questions, prove your constitutional laws apply to me just because I'm physically in Arizona. Because, damn it, that is exactly what the cops are doing. They don't give a damn about your name. They don't care how you spell your name. They don't care if you have a name at all. They're not worried if you have a birth certificate. They don't care if you've registered your name in Minnesota. They see you. They believe they have jurisdiction. You're physically here. My force continuum applies. That's the way they operate. They don't give a damn about all this other stuff. You're like, well, he registered his name. Well, but all right. Bring the Bearcat home. No, put the machine guns down. Put him down. Put him down. He registered his name. He figured it out. Let's hit his neighbor. So, I'm talking with Jerry Cobb yesterday, and this is something that, and I recommend people do that. We all do this because it should be a relentless attack on their presumption or perception legitimacy. And you can gut it real easy. One question. 3 max. It's very easy to do, but they don't want to answer the questions. So what they'll do is they'll say, this office is not permitted to give legal advice. So now if you recall the august senior deputy attorney general in New Hampshire, Nicholas Court, said that I was asking for legal advice or a legal opinion. No, asking for facts is never asking for advice, and is certainly not asking for an opinion. It's asking for facts. See how that works? But these people are not honest. Well, Mark, where's your damn evidence to prove they're not honest? They force us to pay them. They force you and I to pay them. That's my evidence. There you go. If you think they're evidence, if you think that that's not evidence, or if you think that's not true, stop paying them. Don't comply. They'll show their true colors. Maybe not in the first letter or two, but they will. They will. And then you'll have people online that'll cheerlead when they attack you. You should have worn that dress, you slut! Which is the same thing as saying you should have complied. It's the same thing. You're blaming the victim. He then, when I pointed out I wasn't asking for advice, and what I said on the call, I said, there's that word again. I'm not asking for advice. I said, maybe you're on the impression that the word advice means something other than a suggestion in a course of action. Okay, so I'm asking you to describe or give me a course of action I should do in this situation. Then you'd be right. That would be asking for advice. But asking a question of evidence, not advice. You know when they hit you with that, be on the alert, non-responsive, they're dodging, they're trying to, at best, they're trying to think of something to say to you. Oh, my God, what am I going to say? Oh, he's challenging the moral position we have. Oh, good Lord, I can't do that. So then he shifts gears and thinks he's going to change things up. So what he accuses me of, although he denies this, he says, I'm not going to debate the constitutionality of the laws with you, Mark. The courts have ruled for years, that the laws are this, that, and the other thing, and I'm not going to debate you. I said, it's dishonest at best to accuse me of debating. And it's not, he says, well, I didn't accuse you of that. So I know I've mentioned this before. If you say to me, Mark, I'm not going to debate you, okay, you are accusing me of debating. Is that really so hard to understand? Seems to go right past this guy. How the hell could you be a public information officer and not understand the difference between debating and asking a question? But that's his job. His job is to not answer questions, not to answer difficult questions. He's there to run interference. We know this. But we got a lot more information to get to here. We'll be back in just a few moments. Don't go away. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project, live from the fortified compound in Phoenix, Arizona. You want to join me on the big show today, it's 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399, and also on Skype at frankrizzo3. And my email address, if you want to email, I don't use it too much during the show, but it is markstevens@mail.com. That's the easiest one to use, and I'll check that throughout the show. But we were talking about Jerry Cobb. Might as well call it Jerry Cog, because he's just a simple cog in a very violent, vicious, antisocial machine. And so when I questioned him about the law applying and getting past this garbage about, Mark, hey, you're asking for legal advice. Oh, I'm not going to debate the constitutionality of the laws. When I confronted him on this question again and pointed out that I wasn't debating anybody, I wasn't doing anything like that. See, because we're all so stupid that when you ask a question, they can then turn around and say, hey, I'm not going to debate you. Who the hell's debating you? What the hell's the matter with you? Who are you talking to? So that's when he hits me when I said that I would like an answer to the question, and is it common for you to avoid questions from the media? That's when he hits me with this bombshell. Well, you're not the media, Mark. So he apologized, but said it wasn't an insult. He says, whoa, what do? You post something on your website and you call yourself the media? I said, I do a radio show. In fact, I do a small syndicated radio show. He says, I said, I have actual affiliates. And he says, this is an example of moving the goalpost, by the way. You only have one in Arizona. Okay, so what the hell does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do? Well, the media's defined by how many affiliates you have. Well, you say, if you're not with Clear Channel, you're not media. But he, and I mentioned that there was, in Texas and whatnot, but any excuse. Next thing, well, you're not media because you're a filthy anarchist. You don't believe in government. All right. So he says, I don't accept you as media. I said, well, I don't accept you as government. I don't accept you as you and your filthy gang as authorities. You're just men and women who have to force us to pay you. You force us to give you money. You're nothing but a gang of killers, thieves, and liars, and that's the only thing that I will recognize you as. But what's interesting here is that he admits the Constitution is a document, too. Not a shred of evidence that actually applies to me. Not a shred. And so does it bother him that people are sitting in prison because of the office he works for and spoke? No, doesn't bother him at all. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that they can't prove that these laws apply to anybody. They're just going to keep kicking in our doors, killing our pets, and killing us in the name of the law. Their God, the law. Doesn't matter if it applies to anybody. They're just going to keep on doing it. They're just going to keep on doing it. Here's an amazing thing. He really was, it was like he was like getting a sexual thrill, you would think, by trying to prove me wrong. There were a few people out there that go, and I had, someone trolling on YouTube, which is what YouTube, that's what you get on YouTube. You get the trolling. Get some of the most horrible people in their basement or their mother's house just making the most horrible comments on Facebook. Not Facebook, on YouTube. So it's usually nothing ever of merit. Somebody just recently said that everything I said was BS, but nothing specifically. He can't point out one thing specifically and show where it's wrong. But what was really interesting, and I did follow up on an email with him yesterday. This is a county attorney PIO. County attorney. And he actually made the comment to me in this condescending attitude. I mean, almost the entire call, the guy was trying to gaslight me. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was that stupid condescending, Mark, why are you getting upset? Oh, I don't know. You said I wasn't media. You've interrupted every single sentence I've said. You don't let me get a word in edgewise. You're condescending. You're arrogant, and you're a liar. So, is that good enough for you? Your complete lack of respect for me. Oh no, I'm not disrespect. This is what you expect. These people they're not worthy of your time. I do it, and I recommend people do it just so that you can expose them as the killers, thieves, and liars that they are. So he comes out with this unbelievably stupid and just incorrect statement in an effort to gaslight me. Because, of course, I'm Mark Stevens. I'm just a guru and wacko. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Of course, no one's ever called a show and presented something where I was incorrect. Yes, you can show where the courts have disagreed with me, but that doesn't mean what I presented was wrong. I mean, you can, but this is what he said to me. Are you ready for this? This office doesn't prosecute tax cases. I'll say this again. Follow me here. The county attorney's office, Maricopa County Attorney's Office, saying to me that I'm wrong because the Maricopa County Attorney's Office does not prosecute any tax cases. Wow. This is a level of condescension and arrogance that is just mind-blowing. It's like, this is the type of individual you have to walk away from. Because someone like Jerry Cobb is so deeply ingrained in the system. He is so brainwashed that he will make a comment so absolutely wrong, but be so absolutely certain about it at the same time. Reification is a hell of a drug. So I had to explain to Mr. Cobb I did this in the email because I just had to get off the phone with the guy. It was making, they make you want to kill yourself. They make you want to pull your hair out. So I had to let him know that the office does, in fact, prosecute tax cases every single day. The police are out there, whether you want to admit it or not, enforcing taxing statutes. Because that's what cops do. 9/10 or more of what police officers do is revenue farming. They're collecting taxes. They're enforcing the tax code. And I remember some captain years ago in Mesa. I said, do you have any idea? Are you aware that your officers are enforcing violently privilege tax laws? I want the badge number, and I can't believe that my officers would be enforcing privilege tax laws. And I said, why would this upset you that like this? Why would you not be aware of this? It's called a driver's license. I got to control myself there. The driver's license is a tax. Look in the code. It's defined as a tax. Well, Mark, you're just a stupid wacko conspiracy theorist, sovereign state citizen, and you're wrong. They actually call it the vehicle license tax. So when you get that license plate, that is only proof that you have paid the tax. Oh, and I have personally been prosecuted by those vile individuals called prosecutors here in Maricopa County. Many times. Well, most of the time is with those those sleazeballs at the city. Someone like William Burke. But I have David Drexler was one of the county ones. So I can guarantee you, anyone says that the county attorney does not prosecute tax cases is so full of crap. I guess their eyes are brown. We'll continue this. We got a lot more here on the No State Project. You can call me and join me. It's 218-632-9399, especially if you think I'm full of crap.
I said, there's somebody wrong. Oh, play the blues. Must have did somebody wrong.